And I think we're live. This is another session and a fireside chat with Dr. Evangelos Simoudis. Welcome, everybody. I want to, of course, say a very big thank you to the organizing team of Panorama. It's a great privilege to be with you again. Thank you very, very much to the team there. And this is Professor Lavopoulos and Dimitris and all the rest of the team. I know you guys have been working feverishly for the last few months to put on this digital event. And I look forward to both Dr. Simoudis and I look forward to seeing your questions. But let me welcome Dr. Simoudis then. So let me introduce myself, first of all. I'm Stavros Messinis. I'm the founder of theCUBE. And you may have heard of theCUBE, but let's not talk about theCUBE. We have with us today Dr. Evangelos Simoudis. And Dr. Simoudis is a recognized expert on next generation mobility, artificial intelligence, and big data, and corporate innovation. And he's been working in Silicon Valley for almost 30 years as a venture investor, a senior advisor to governments around the world and global corporations. He's an entrepreneur, a corporate executive, and a technologist. And currently he's the co-founder and managing director of Synapse Partners, a firm that advises global corporations and invests in early stage startups developing enterprise software AI applications. He's also an author, and his most recent publication is called Transportation Transformation, and a previous publication was called The Big Data Opportunity, and I expect Dr. Simoudis will give us more information on those books and more insights from those books. Dr. Simoudis, welcome, and it's wonderful to have you with us today on Panorama.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. I look forward to the conversation. It's always a pleasure to interact with all entrepreneurs, and particularly those coming from Greece.
Well, Greece has made great strides in the last maybe 10, 15 years and more, and it's been accelerating as well. And in fact, this last situation has really accelerated quite a lot of things. And during our preparation talks in the last week or so, Dr. Simoudis, we discussed certain aspects of what we should be discussing. But before we do, give us a very quick kind of intro for yourself and what you're currently working on, something really exciting that's going on in your life these days.
So I left Greece in '78, and in the intervening 40 years, I would say that I've changed three different careers. I started as you said, as a technologist, and continued when I came to Silicon Valley a little over 30 years ago now. I became an entrepreneur. I did 2 startups, and I also did a stint as a corporate executive for a few years at IBM. And then for the past 20 years, I've been working on early stage ventures, investing in early stage entrepreneurs, initially in the US and over time kind of globally. Today, I mean, for the past 4.5 years that we've had Synapse, the focus was to create, to rethink what venture capital means. And so our current effort both invests in startups, but also works with large corporations from 3 industries in order to try to understand what are the important problems that we should be funding as investors. And that has brought us, both myself and my team, quite close to some very important corporations in 3 big industries: automotive, and by extension transportation, financial services, and telco. And I would say on a more personal basis, because of the research that I did for both the first book and particularly the second, I have come closer to cities now that are starting to think very deeply about their transportation environment and their transportation services, which goes all the way to how they redesign their infrastructures as well as the cities themselves.
Of course, cities are growing massively, and we're having more and more mega cities come into existence, mainly in Asia. But if we look at some of the mega cities in North America, some in Africa, of course, and there's a few European ones as well, you're absolutely right. If cities are not thinking about their infrastructure and how they're moving, how people are moving around them efficiently and effectively, they become hotbeds of problems. And not only become hotbeds, they become hotbeds of problems too.
Right. You're absolutely right. There are many issues. There are many mega trends, as I point actually in the book, that are starting to impact cities. And more recently, even with the pandemic, the so-called future of work is, I think, will become an even bigger contributor to how cities think about transportation and what they provide to their citizens.
So in our prep, we spoke a little bit about Greek startups and what Greece has been doing. And one of the issues we discussed briefly was how Greek startups were very much focusing, well, at least in the past years, on consumer products or consumer services versus more big business, more B2B type businesses. Are you seeing the similar trends in other European cities or around the world that we're looking where there's like an evolution from putting technology that's in people's hands, whether it's mobile applications or mobile devices, to build more infrastructure type stuff? Because I am seeing that with some Greek startups, and I get a sense that we're effectively evolving from the consumer side of things to a more kind of infrastructure type of things. I expect you might see similar things.
What we often see in entrepreneurs globally is that they tend to start working on problems that they face. And they want to become entrepreneurs, and the easiest source for creating a solution is to find a problem that they personally have. Maybe they heard from their friends, and that tends to be a consumer-oriented problem. And if you're in an environment, in a market like Greece, where there aren't many large corporations, then it is much easier to gravitate towards those consumer-oriented problems. Israel is a very interesting example of doing some things right, which I believe that for a very long time, that Greece can follow as well. And that is very much like Greece, Israel lacks the large corporations that are indigenous. So the entrepreneurs then, they're from very early stage, they start to look outside the country. And so in fact, one of the points that I was discussing with you earlier is that I believe that particularly for Greek entrepreneurs, it will be important to as soon as they start thinking about entrepreneurship, provided that they would like to work in an enterprise space, to start looking globally, right? And as opposed to thinking within the borders of Greece. Today, I think it has become easier to communicate, but I think in order to create those initial connections, it will require more of a peripatetic life, as I call it, right? You need to travel a lot. You need to go to places where corporations exist, and then you utilize your contacts and contacts of contacts in order to get an in. Venture investors a lot of times obviously help in creating these connections, but for the entrepreneur who is trying to create that initial idea that will form the basis for the product, for the solution they want to create, it will be important to look at outside the borders.
So speaking about talking to big business or B2B or enterprise and selling to them, because I think that is a very big challenge for an entrepreneur or a team or a new startup who don't have that, if you like, I'll use the word with being quite careful, the pedigree, if you like, of having worked or having been in big enterprise or having that Rolodex, having that big contact list. It is a very, very difficult thing to make that first sale, especially to big enterprise who might not trust a new startup, who might not trust a startup that has pedigree or has a history or has the ability to deliver an enterprise solution. Any advice you could give a new team with regard to not only getting on the radar, but also kind of getting a sale made to an enterprise much faster than what it currently takes? Because right now you're looking at many months, if not years, before you can actually gain trust with big enterprise and actually book a sale.
So if I could, I like to take the question kind of to go a little deeper than that contact. And if I look at startups in budding ecosystems, right? Budding startup ecosystems, and I consider obviously Greece's ecosystem to be such. Even when you have the founding entrepreneurs, somebody who has the fire to go create a company, the ambition. What I feel that this ecosystem lack is first and foremost product people. Okay, so there's a difference between understanding a technology and being able to put together something that is technologically interesting from putting something that is a product that somebody would want to buy. Okay, so you need product people. The second ingredient, if you can call it that you're missing is experienced management teams. So I have, in this 20-year career that I've had as a VC, I have funded a number of teams that were brilliant technologists, but they did not know how to manage even a small company. So you need experienced management, and we'll talk about how to get this. But let me first articulate what the ingredients, and then we'll go to how you make the souffle. And the next ingredient is risk capital, and I'll call it risk capital because what we have seen in Europe in general is that you have venture capital companies, organizations, but you do not have risk capital. And to me, risk capital means that there are investors who are willing to fund early stage entrepreneurs and can meaningfully help them to get to the next stage, right? They know what it means to take that team of 3 and build it to a team of 10 and take the 0 customers or maybe 2 interested parties and turn them into customers, so that stage. And then obviously the final point is what you said, having the enterprises that will be willing to test the product, to take the risk again, right? To be the beta testers, to shape the product. Mm-hmm. So what you do in order to start now building some of these, bringing together some of these ingredients is that, again, you need to look outside your borders and you need to look at places that have these ingredients. And again, if I were to look at Greece, Israel has venture capital that understands risk. I would say, in fact, that Israel has a lot better risk capital than, say, France or Germany or the UK, okay, which also have venture firms, but they do not have the risk capital, okay? You need to look at places where you can find, whether it is co-founders or you can find people who understand product, right, who are product management. And there again is where I think the mettle of the entrepreneur shows. How do you convince an individual who may not know anything about you, who may hear Greece as a vacation place, but not as a hotbed of entrepreneurship, to join your company? I was we're doing quite a bit of work in Singapore. Singapore has actually developed a very impressive startup ecosystem, and we were talking to some recruiters on what are the characteristics that we as VCs look for in bringing this initial set of people together around to surround the entrepreneurs, right? And how the recruiter can help the entrepreneur and the investor, for that matter, to bring the right team together. In terms of experience management, the only way I can see it is I call it you get the flywheel going. So you need to have a long-term horizon. You'll have a few successes initially with startups. Typically, the people who are successful with startups, they will go do more startups. And people who have worked in startups and have been successful executives there, sometimes they may go become founders themselves, but a lot of times they will go join other startups, right? So we've seen this happen in Germany. We've seen it happen in France. We've seen it happen. I mean, so there are many positive examples where we've seen this blueprint, if you will, develop and work out well. But you need to keep realizing that you need these ingredients in addition to the fire and the drive that only the founders can bring, right? I mean, the founders are a very special group of people, and not everybody can be a founder. Everybody can start a company, but not everybody can be a successful founder. But the ones that end up becoming successful, you always see these very common characteristics that they have. So anyway.
So I guess that common characteristic is that burning desire to achieve something great and be very strict with oneself about working really hard, being kind of crazy and assuming risk and actually kind of getting your ducks in a row, I suppose.
But also being able to see the opportunity, right? Seeing the opportunity could mean understanding that somebody has a problem that if you solve it can lead to a big market. Many times, though, also means that seeing something that nobody understands, that there is going to be a problem there, and solving that. I mean, Steve Jobs was notorious for saying, people do not know what they want. I'll tell them what they want. And he was able to scan over the horizon, if you will, right? And not always successfully. I mean, think of Next. But many times very successfully, right? So again, Elon Musk, same story. There are some people who have this special knack, but a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of successful entrepreneurs, just understand when to solve a problem there's a problem in a big market, and that makes them successful. In other words, not everybody needs to be Steve Jobs in order to be a successful entrepreneur, but they need to be able, in addition to the drive, in addition to this burning desire to succeed, and be willing to make the sacrifices that are necessary to achieve that success, to also be able, as I said, to see the problem that needs to be solved.
So that's quite interesting in the sense that we're always thinking about what influences young people have to be able to grow into people who have that kind of drive and that kind of sensing, if you like. I was going to use the word sensitivity, but it's more the drive and more the desire to actually build something great and something big and be very ambitious, being crazy but not stupid. But it's really interesting to and I'm not sure that Greece, at least the policies in Greece over the last 50 years or so were geared towards producing people of that. I shouldn't use the word caliber, but I just did. But I'm feeling that in the past few years and the years to come, the next generations will have that kind of a drive, or will be looking at that kind of a quality, if you like, within our youth.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
I wanted us to talk very briefly about your recent publication. Do you want to give us some insights on the book?
So again, I will go back. So since I came to the US, I would say what attracted me a lot is the so-called systems thinking, And I was very fortunate over the years to sometimes to be able to see, sometimes to be attracted to situations where systems thinking was necessary and an important ingredient. So after I wrote the first book dealt with the importance of big data and AI in driverless mobility. And to me, driverless mobility is both autonomous vehicles as well as mobility services. So as long as the what is being transported, be it a good or a passenger, does not have to drive, right? But when after I published the first book, I started to realize that even if we were to achieve autonomous and driverless mobility, there are many issues that need to be addressed, primarily coming from the fact that today in urban transportation, which is what I'm focusing on, the three contributors to that mobility, in other words, the privately owned vehicles and the automakers that create them, that manufacture them, mobility services companies, whether it is ride-hailing, micro-mobility, or package delivery companies on the other end, because these are mobility services companies.
Absolutely.
And cities with their public transportation systems, they work in silos, right? So and they optimize the performance in a very local way. I mean, to think about optimization terms. So I felt that in order to be able to improve urban transportation, these constituencies need to collaborate. But before they can collaborate, they need to transform. So the book is about what are the transformations, the prescriptions of what are transformations that each of these three constituencies needs to undertake. And once they do that, how they can come together and what are the value chains that are being created, that can be created, and we're seeing the emergence of those, as well as what are the business models and the value, the forms of value that will be exchanged in these value chains. And I will also say that I use the word value chain because it's a commonly understood term. But these are not really chains in the linear sense of the word. These are more networks that are going to evolve. So that's what the new book is about. It's kind of like a far more ambitious effort than the first one. It's been well reviewed. We'll see whether the sales and the impact, more importantly, are commensurate with the initial reviews.
It sounds fantastic, and it sounds to me like you're describing an operating system for a society, and how, at least for the movement of goods and services and people through a society, whether it's local or translocal, and how all these entities intercommunicate and how they exchange data and how you produce efficiency within all that. Because you're very right.
Actually, this is an amazing point that you made, because I do think of it. I mean, again, I'm a computer scientist by training, and I do think of it as an operating system for cities.
Sure.
Because again, in my view, it is the city that needs to take the initiative and the leadership role. It's not the automaker, it's not the mobility services company, but it's really the city. But it's amazing that you use it, because that's exactly how I think about it.
Let's call it the polis. Let's call it the polis, because we will use the Greek word for city. We have about 10 minutes left, and I'd like to go to some questions. We have a first question from Panayoti Ketikidi. Panayoti runs a business angel network up in Thessaloniki, and he was a previous speaker just before our session. And he has a question here for Greece and Greek government. What is your advice to build or nurture risk capital?
So back in 2009, 2010, I was asked that question by the then government. And I said that, again, I'm sorry, I keep bringing Israel up because I think there are so many lessons that Greece can learn from their experience. But in '82, Israel created YOSMA. And I think it was a very successful endeavor. I mean, and in my mind, it had kind of like three components to it that made it successful. First, the government said, we're going to put this money, but in order for us to put this money, whoever wants to create funds, they need to go out and get, I think it was 90-10. So 10%, they need to raise 10% of the funds. Then they said, for the first however many years, all the gains that they will have, that these venture firms are going to have, are going to be tax-free. And that gave an extra incentive and they'll forgive losses and all of that. So they were not thinking. And the next thing is that they said, this is going to be a national program. This is not going to be a governmental program. And it's a very important distinction. That means that no matter which party comes to power, this program will continue.
Strategic objective.
Okay, it's a national strategic imperative. That's right. Yeah. Okay. And the final point that they made is they went to the diaspora, and the Israeli diaspora was extremely successful globally, right? So they had these delegations that will go and approach executives working in large corporate Israeli-based executives that were working in large corporations, entrepreneurs, and they try to create these connections. And that, by the way, ended up one of the most. We were talking earlier about big corporations and how they can help startups. You need to look at how many Western corporations established operations in Israel, which became the ground, the teaching ground for an entire generation of entrepreneurs who went to work for an IBM, an Intel, a Motorola that had established operations in Israel. So again, this was a long-term project, right? This did not happen in 3 years, in 5 years. I mean, as I said, 82. You can do the math. So I mean, in my mind, I think something like that is necessary. I don't believe that just throwing the money in, I have a number of issues with how European Union does certain things. But it's not only about the money. That's my point. You need to create the right incentives. You need to create and to build that ecosystem. I mean, I know about the Jeremy program that occurred in Greece. I thought it had certain faults in the way that it forced people to invest, right? The time period was too short in an ecosystem that had zero infrastructure.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing with incentives, especially around tax. I mean, there's a lot of good around the European Union, but there's also quite a few bad things because, if a local government had to input some points around incentives and things, that could also be classed as a competition kind of issue with other European states. So there's a
That's right. I mean, every country needs to understand its own condition.
Sure. We have one more question before we wrap up from Christina Zavara. Do you think a founder with a disruptive idea is more likely to get funded, or one with an idea that is not innovative but has a solid plan?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
So I think what she's getting at is how important is the disruptive idea versus a disruptive, innovative idea versus a solid plan for a less disruptive, more kind of mainstream business.
I see, yeah. So again, I think it depends on the firm. So if you look at here in the United States, if you look at a firm like Lux Capital, Lux Capital is looking for what they call deep tech ideas, right? So they take a very long-term view on what they're going to fund, and obviously they bet on the founding team making that idea a reality. Most venture firms obviously pay attention to the IP, but they need to be able to associate the IP with a market opportunity. And if there is, even if the market does not yet exist in a form, so we have, for example, ideas for the customer relationship management market. I mean, it's a formed market, right? But on the other hand, when we started looking at ideas for space technology, there isn't a well-defined market. And then the role of the entrepreneur is to convince, to make the investor imagine that this can be the right market. I receive a number of business plans from around the world that have disruptive ideas, but no sense of how this can be applied and why this could evolve into an important market if the idea comes to fruition. And that's why I keep saying it's not only about having the technology, but you really need the people who will be willing to shape into a product. If you look at Elon Musk's SpaceX, right, that has the rockets that can land themselves, this was a disruptive technology, but making it into a product and then making it into a product that has the right financial returns took a lot of time. And Musk actually was able to bankroll that himself and attract outside capital. Before they even started getting customers. Right. And but I think to me that's an important, that's why I keep talking about, it's not only about the technology, but it's also about how you take that technology into a product, even if the market does not exist. But we need to be able to paint a picture of what this market has the potential of being.
Dr. Simoudis, I think we've overstayed our welcome. I'm getting a message on the private chat that our session is about to end. I want to thank you so much for being part of Panorama this year. Give us one target to achieve for the next time we meet.
Well, I hope that there is